and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show, brought to you as always by progressivechristianity.org, an incredible place to get all your progressive Christian resource needs. Hope you'll follow Progressive Christianity on social media and that you'll follow the Moonshine Jesus Show on Facebook and subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcasts. I'm joined today, as always, by the one and only Mark Sandlin. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing great, sir. Doing great. Looking forward to the show as always.
Of course, yes. Today we're going to be talking about the controversial new movie, Snow White. And if you haven't seen it, there will be spoilers. And there are some differences from the 1937 version.
Indeed.
So don't think just because you've seen that, you know everything that happened. So before we get into spoiling this for you all, we're going to need to pour ourselves a drink. Do you have a drink, Mark?
I do. Magic mirror on the wall, who's always asked who is the fairest of them all. I have the fairest cocktail of them all.
Ooh,
it's actually quite lovely. And it is Frangelico, vanilla vodka, half and half, and then it's shaken with ice. And I've got a little sugar rim on it to make it look even a little more Snow White and magical. So the fairest cocktail of them all.
I love that. Yours is very white too. I love how white that is. So I've got a Snow White Cosmo, and it is a Cosmo, despite the fact that it's in a tumbler today. Mine's yellower though. Mine's not quite as white as yours is, but it has vodka, cranberry juice, and lime juice. But
lovely.
I'm sure it's going to be delicious just the same.
It sounds like it will be.
Why don't we take a drink and come back and get into it? Cheers, Mark.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome to the Geek Out segment of the Moonshine Jesus Show, where we let our geek flags fly high and proud, especially obviously around sci-fi and fantasy shows. So I'm going to jump right in on this. Everyone knows what Snow White is. You've already let folks know that this is like the live version with some changes to the storyline. So I don't want to just rehash all of that. What I want to jump into is I know that you went to see this movie with one of your kids, and I want to know, I'm desperate to know first what her review of the movie was afterwards, and then I want to hear from you some of the things that seemed to engage her and excite her, or maybe didn't, as she's watching the show.
Yeah, so before we went to the movie, I said, hey, do you want to know what the Rotten Tomatoes score is? She said, no, don't tell me. Don't tell me. I said, oh, you want to make your own decision? And she said, yes. And so we went in and we watched the movie. And afterwards, she said, and I'd forgotten we even talked about that. She said, well, Dad, what were the Rotten Tomatoes? And I'm like, are you talking about the apples? I'm like, she was eating an apple. It was an apple. It wasn't a tomato. It was an apple. She's like, no. The Rotten Tomatoes score. I said, I think it's sitting at 44% by critics. And no, I said, wait, no, you tell me what you want first, what you would rate it. And she's like, I would rate it 1,000 out of 10. And I said, well, it's on a scale of 1 to 100. So how about out of 1 to 100? She still said 1,000 out of 100. So she was into it. And I said, no, the critics have said 44%. And I said, but the popcorn meter, the audience score, has it at like 75-ish percent when we went to watch it anyway.
Yeah.
And so she loved the music. She's super into musicals. And so she liked the songs. And I know that the songs, reception to the songs has been mixed. She was really into that. She was also just really into the story. She kind of remembered the story, but didn't super remember the story. But colors, the characters. She thought it was funny. She was invested in what was going to happen and hoping for Snow White and the villagers. So she was into it, Mark. She loved it. Her review,
I
1,000 out of 10.
I absolutely love to hear that, because one of the things that stood out to me about this, at least personally, even more so than the original 1936 or 38, whatever it was, movie, this was made for kids.
Mhm.
It's weird. They did throw in some kind of political overtones about
Yeah.
socialism and different things.
Mhm.
But when you really look at the dialogue, when you look at the way it was filmed, when you look at the color of it, when you look at uh, uh, a at least, I mean, we know, for anyone who's been following anything at all, we know this has been through several iterations before it
Mhm.
made it to the viewing the public. But it's very clear that a lot of the folks who worked on it were making a movie for kids. And it was very successful, it sounds like. Every kid that I was in the theater with, and there were several families with kids, were just hyper engaged and making oohs and ahs and all
Mhm.
kinds of stuff. So I thought it went well. So then what's your popcorn score?
I think
I
actually
guess we're critics. Maybe it's your Rotten
I,
Tomatoes score.
I get it. I'll give my popcorn score. I actually thought this was pretty right on. Somewhere in the 70s was felt right to me. I recognize there are some issues here,
Yeah.
and but it was fun to watch, and I think you're so right. It was made for kids, and I hadn't seen the animated movie in a long, long time. But as
Mhm.
Snow White went into the forest and those trees came alive, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember being
Yeah.
terrified of this scene when I was a kid, and
There were
I was kind
so
of
many
transported
moments.
back to that. Yeah, so many
That's one
moments.
of the things I did love, was there were so many moments with a live version, at least in terms of memory, mimicked the cartoon. It felt like that's almost exactly what my mind remembers that happened. Even down to when that when Gal Gadot has turned into the witch, or the older
Yeah,
lady, and she's
yeah,
crumpled over at the door holding up the apple. It
yeah.
felt, it was almost a one for one mirror of exactly what I remembered it looking like. And that happened a lot, I thought.
I thought so too, but I thought they also like added some different elements to even those familiar scenes that uh, made them a little better. I thought um, Rachel Ziegler killed it as Snow White, and I think that that is something that has been pretty universally praised as her
Mm,
performance. And I thought that her songs were great, and a lot of people I think felt like the songs weren't that memorable, or that they were just standard
yeah.
Disney fare. And maybe that's true, but I liked them. I thought they added to it. I know that was also something that was kind of controversial, is whether or not we even needed songs or not.
Right.
But I personally liked it. I also personally felt pretty engaged. Maybe putting aside for a few minutes the elephant in the room of the CGI dwarfs. That's maybe a whole other thing. But like the story generally, I liked. I thought in the 70s was pretty right on. How about you? How
Yeah.
did you feel?
Yeah, I would put it in the low 70s. I would call it a mixed bag. It's very much a mixed bag. There were high moments. There were very, very low kind of, oh, are you serious moments? Although
Mhm.
I did kept trying to remind myself, I think this is being made for the kids, not for me. And,
Yeah.
kind of trying to, and so, but it's very watchable.
Yeah.
It is engaging. It's very visually stimulating and interesting. Um, as for the music, I thought Ziegler, I thought, was great in the acting. It's so weird. I thought
Mhm.
Ziegler was great in the acting part, much better than the singing part, but partly because I
Mm.
don't think they gave, other than Whistle While You Work, I don't
Mhm.
think they gave her very good songs. I do
Yeah.
think the songs were very kind of bland, and she killed them. Her voice is outstanding,
Yeah.
but I just didn't get engaged with it because of that. Um, the standout moment for me, weirdly, maybe not weirdly, Gal Gadot's evil moment of song where she with it's the giant production, and I mean
Yeah.
Gal Gadot can't sing, but but they gave her a song that kept within 6 or 7 notes, I think,
Yeah.
and she performed the hell out of those 6 or 7 notes, and the choreography was right on point, and but all the moves right and beat, and coordinated with massive amounts of folks doing the dance along, and a great. That
Yeah.
was the standout moment for me.
I remember
did you-
watching that. I
Yeah.
was watching it and I'm like, she's singing? Why do they have her singing?
Why did they-
I did have like a moment where I stopped like being really in the film, and I was
Mhm.
like out of it, and I'm like, she's singing. And yes, you're right. She can't sing, but she pulled
I
it
thought
off.
she killed it.
And in character, it was right on.
In terms of things that were outside of the original movie,
Yeah.
that was the standout moment for me. I just thought it was. I really did think it was exceptionally well done. Did you have a standout moment throughout the movie? One that just pops in your head?
For me, it was "Whistle While You Work." I thought it was fun
It was
to
great.
sing that. It was also kind of engaging. It was a little participatory because
Mhm.
the whole audience was whistling, and
Right.
and so I was there with my daughter, of course, and so we were like she was trying to whistle and I was whistling, and so we were, and then we left the theater whistling that. I also thought another one that did kind of I guess a couple of other things that just kind of stood out to me was
Yeah.
I did appreciate that there was less dependence on the prince, and I know that was another piece of controversy around the film,
Mhm.
and so I appreciated some updating of that was
Did you think it was
something
enough
noticeable.
updating? I mean, they tried to give Snow White more
Yeah.
agency, but
Well, I mean,
and they
okay, man,
did
I
give her
think
more, but
it
was it
did, but I
appropriately
mean,
enough?
I think you've like identified the primary issue here is that like this is a tough fairy tale to really bring into the 21st century.
Yeah.
It is kind of the whole story is her being with these 7 dwarfs, and that's like the story is her being and cleaning the house, cleaning up, taking care of these these guys who can't take care of themselves, and she's like cleaning their house and being with the birds and stuff. And then
Right.
the prince who's kind of just seen her once and falls instantly in love with her, and then searches for her, kind of as Rachel Ziegler says, kind of stalks her, and then she's poisoned, and the prince's kiss, the true love kiss, even though they don't know each other, is what wakes her
And she's
from the
asleep
sleep.
the first
And
time
she's asleep. There's no
oh,
consent.
that's just the creep
I mean,
factor is off the charts.
is it like does the updating like really bring it fully into the 21st century? No, but like, can you with the story? I mean, what do you like? Was it why? I guess that was my question the whole time. Mark is like, why did we do this to begin with? I mean,
You know,
is this story that
I
really we
think,
can even do? I don't know.
yeah, I kind of agree with you all. Except I would augment what you just said. I would say, why did we do this way if we were going to do it? Like,
Mm.
I think you have to do a full retelling of the peak of the story.
Mm.
Like, I think you don't have the prince come in, or maybe you have her rescue the prince in some way. I don't know. I think the ending has to change, and I don't know exactly how. I do like that they did subtle things where it wasn't so much as her doing the physical work of taking care of the 7 companions' house, as much as
Right.
she was kind of counseling with them and getting them to do what they
Right.
should have been doing to start with. So I kind of like some of those changes. I like that she's the one that stands up to the wicked stepmother, and it's not I think the 7 companions run her off a cliff or something in the original. They rescue her again. She's rescued by so many people in that original one that it's just, I think that this was an opportunity to reclaim the story in a way that is more strengthening and more realistic about who women are. And I think they fell pretty short of doing that.
So, so do you think like this middle ground was kind of a ground that pleased nobody? And I mean, is that part of what the issue is about? That like we kind of, because the right was kind of was saying this whole film was a woke film, right? That
Right.
that was the narrative
Well,
around the film, was that it was woke. And so like and so by not going that whole
all
way
the
that you
way.
just described, I mean, did we land in a middle ground that ultimately was appealing to no
We,
one
we,
except maybe the
yeah,
9-year-olds? I
yeah,
don't know.
we landed in a middle ground that didn't matter.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
if it wasn't that this show was correcting all the problems from the early one, if it dropped today on its own for the first time, and we're all watching, we would all be going, "Oh crap, are you serious? Is that the story you're going to tell? Is that how you're going to have it resolve? You're going to have like, and he's going to kiss her, and they've never kissed before, and she's just, I mean, we would all be, the only reason that it almost works is because we know how bad it was to start with." And so, yeah, no, I kind of feel like it's they could have done a better job, I think. And they didn't do anybody any favors by leaving it where they did. One last question. So we're talking all around these different topics. There were pre-release controversial issues.
Yeah.
How do you think ultimately, name one or two of them and tell me how you think the movie, the producers, the marketing managed them? Like, it can be that the 7 companions weren't going to be in it to start with. It can be who's playing Snow White, whatever you think. I'm just curious to hear how you think the team navigated those pre-release controversies.
Well, let's take let's take the companions here, right? As a case in point, like you and I have talked about this already, that like they originally weren't going to be in the story in this way, and so then they put them in, and then Peter Dinklage early on, you know, one of the probably the most famous actor, right? With dwarfism.
If anything, he reclaimed dwarfism as a space where real talent can play any role. And he showed folks how real that was.
Yeah, and so he's like, hey, we shouldn't be doing this movie at all because it's incredibly problematic.
Mhm.
And so they're like, okay, well, we're also getting pushback about having them in there. And then so they decide to make them not real people, but mythical creatures that last for centuries. And then uh, they're going to be voiced by people without dwarfism, but they're going to be CGI. And then there was a lot of backlash from folks with dwarfism, actors with dwarfism, who then didn't have those parts, who were upset because like
they only cast one. There was one that got cast
as a voice.
Yeah, as a voice.
One of the
One
voices.
guy, I think it was Grumpy. I think Grumpy was someone with dwarfism. Yeah.
Okay, and
but
then we had
it's still that fact still holds true. You got 7 here, and you decided to only cast one that way, and then you have the 7 rogue guys who were going to replace them originally, and they cast one of them, just to, which was also ridiculous.
So I guess, Mark, my point here is they handled it badly, and I think to the point that we were saying earlier, we hit a middle ground that ultimately pleased absolutely no one.
Yeah.
So that's where I land on it.
I completely agree. If it wasn't for a few songs that were really, really good, visuals that were off the charts, I mean, the 7 companions looked a little out of place in some way, and they also looked a little all too much alike, except for Dopey. I mean, they just kind of looked like the same character over and over again. Anyway, I agree. It's still worth watching, particularly if you have a kid in your life that might enjoy it. It's more than worth going and watching and recognizing how much they're going to enjoy it. So we could go on and on, but we should not do that because we need to move on and talk about some theological and political perspectives that come out of this movie. So we're going to take a quick drop and we'll come back on the other side.
Hello, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show, where we are entering our Theopolitico segment. And Mark, as you mentioned, there were a lot of things that made it controversial.
Indeed.
One of them was the relationship between Ziegler and Godot.
Yeah.
Primarily that Rachel Ziegler has taken very vocal pro-Palestinian stances, and Gal Gadot she is Israeli and has taken a very vocal pro-Israel statements. So, Mark, tell me this: do you think it's apropos that Rachel Ziegler was playing Snow White and Gal Gadot was playing the evil queen, or is there more nuance to it than that?
No, I don't think there was anything intentional about it, but boy, does it speak volumes of the reality of who stands on what side of morals and morality here. Unfortunately, the outcome isn't necessarily what at this point, you cannot say that we're going to, in real life, have an outcome that could even come close to mirroring the outcome of this Snow White. The unbelievable number of lives that we have lost due to the Israeli government's heavy hand and greed and heartless actions. I stumble for words just because of the grief of thinking of all those lives and the way the world has not responded other than to send aid. It's heartbreaking.
Yes.
But yes, in the roles of the evil queen and Snow White, man, yeah. Sometimes life mirrors poetry, and boy, sure did this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the aid that's being sent. I mean, at a time when we are cutting aid, both the
Particularly from
U.S.
the U.S.
Even though I mean the judges have said, hey, that's we're not going to cut that right now. That
Right.
whether or not that ends up being cut, I think remains to be seen as to whether the Trump administration feels like they're actually accountable to the judicial system. I'm not sure that they do. And so, in fact, I'm rather sure they don't. But aid is also being cut globally too. So yeah, I think that that was something that was just very present on my mind as I was watching Godot as this evil queen, as I couldn't help but see the actions of Israel. And it also reminds me of how split people are on the issue when I think it's really pretty cut and dry if we take
it definitely is
all the baggage out of it.
The only reason people are split is because a group has worked so hard to sell a false narrative of what's going on. But yeah, I'll leave it right there. I could get up on I was about to step up on the soapbox, but yeah, there's been such a false narrative about what opposing Israel's actions looks like. That's very problematic, and it has caused a great deal of the divide that, as you said, should be very straightforward in terms of what's okay here.
Yeah, and just I mean to build on that, right? It's not anti-Semitic to condemn genocide. It's just not.
Nope.
And Judaism
or to
is
condemn
not
a
Zionism.
government not a people, but a
Yeah.
government.
Right. Because Jews are not Israel, and Jews and Zionists. Not all Jews are Zionists, right?
Yeah, right.
Like most
Exactly.
Jews are not Zionists. That's
Yeah.
just like most Christians ought not be Zionist. And
Yeah,
so I
exactly.
think that I'm not going to say most American Christians aren't Zionists because I'm not
Sometimes you
sure that
wonder at
that's
this
true.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, so I certainly saw that as I was watching the
Yeah.
movie. Another point of controversy that
Wow.
I want to talk about
Yeah.
is another one that you mentioned as one of my options in the last segment, Mark,
Yeah.
which was the casting of Rachel Ziegler. And
Mhm.
so, of course, in the 1937 movie, and excuse me, in the fairy tale, the reason Snow White is named Snow White is because her skin is white as
So
snow. And and so there was a lot of controversy about uh, uh, casting Latina for that role. Uh,
yep.
what what do you think about that controversy? Was there some
Yeah.
justification there or
No.
not? And what does that say about casting in Hollywood in general?
I there shouldn't have been controversy about this. A person who plays a role well plays a role well, and frankly, as we both have already said, she absolutely killed playing the role of Snow White. I love that the writers kind of reworked it and basically said she was named Snow White because she was born while it was snowing, and so it gives that kind of now we understand the name. And beyond that, I love that Hollywood is becoming more diverse in the way they cast. They're much more interested in casting the right person for the right role and not giving in to, frankly, racists who are trying to control everything because, well, it used to be this, it used to be that. Well, there's a reason it used to be that because it used to be racist. So we need to not do that shit. So I love that Hollywood is becoming more open minded about let's find the right person for the role and let that work because it will if you get the right person.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that one of the things that I've heard from the right is okay, hey, if we're casting culturally appropriately in other films, like we're not whitewashing films, then
Right.
if this is something that is made for a white actress, then why are we hiring a person of color to fill that role? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that reverse racism? That's something that I've heard in response to this movie. And so, obviously, I mean, the difference here, folks, is that uh, we're talking about a historically marginalized group
Right.
getting added opportunities instead of taking opportunities away from a historically marginalized group. And so I'm with you. I thought that it was a smart rewriting in a way that was less racist
Yep.
to begin with. And
Yeah.
so I for me it felt like the right decision, and I completely agree. I think she killed the part. I think
Yeah.
she just did a fantastic job.
They could have given her a
So
better haircut, though. I'm just going to say, right? It needs to be said. She could have been given a. That was a great disservice. I think it just shows what a great actress she is that she overcame that freaking haircut. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll leave that alone.
did I mean, did you see the meme with her and Lord Farquaad?
Farquaad?
Yeah,
No, but it
from
makes
Struck
sense. It makes
because of the
sense.
hair. Yeah, not no disrespect to Rachel Ziegler here. She I thought she pulled it off. I
She
thought it's
at
a
first I
bad haircut.
wasn't sure. At
Yeah,
first I was kind of like, oh, that's not fair. But
yeah.
honestly, as it went on, I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, you're working it. Great. Good for you. Good for you.
She is, yes. So this movie also, as it was attempting to become more relevant to the 21st century, made
Mhm.
a number of commentaries on social issues.
Yeah.
And so one of the quotes that we get actually from the narrator is that fear gripped the kingdom and her power grew after the queen took over. And she took what they had in abundance for herself. And clearly, I think this parallels us where we are, right? I mean, we've got billionaires running our
You mean
country.
you in California? It's not the rest of the nation, right?
No, I mean you and me. But luckily, we have billions of dollars and
We
we're
do.
controlling things. Thank
Yes.
God.
Yes, thank goodness.
no, okay. We've got
Yeah.
a country run by uber rich people,
Yeah.
and what do we do, Mark? How do we stop them when the checks and balances of our country seemingly don't work anymore? When we've
Yeah.
got people issuing executive orders, the Trump issuing executive orders
Yeah.
with no repercussions, even when judges rule those things to be unconstitutional, we're not stopping. How do we stop what's going on right
I
now
would
with
give
those
you
who
a
have so much money and
straightforward.
power?
I'm gonna give
Yeah.
you a straightforward, very simple answer. We're running out of time on this segment, and it's an important subject. I would go on and on, except it doesn't require going on and on. The reason that they're getting to do it is because people aren't doing their fucking jobs.
Mm,
What we do is we make those people uncomfortable. And there's
Yeah.
lots of ways of doing that. We do it in city halls. We do it with boycotts and blackouts. We have to make the people who actually have the power, because individually we don't. We do collectively have the power to make the people who aren't doing their jobs to control this crap uncomfortable enough that they decide it's better for them to do their fucking jobs. Excuse my language.
I think that never has a fucking been more appropriate than than right here, because I mean, yeah, we are seeing the fall of democracy.
We are.
That we are very quickly descending into fascism, and
Mhm.
whenever the courts are losing their power, whenever Congress is losing its power, and we've got all of the power in one branch of government, and there are no checks and balances. This
Yeah.
It's something that's terrifying, and
It
so
is.
yeah, I think certainly going after the wallets of the people who are responsible for this. I think what we've seen around boycotts of Tesla and stock dropping, I think is
Yep.
really important. And I think you're right to add pressure to those responsible for ensuring those checks and balances.
And these town hall meetings where we are embarrassing Congress folks and people and House representatives who aren't doing their jobs, it's beginning to make a difference. On the Hill, there are talks about what are we going to do. We can't allow that. There's enough pressure that it's beginning to matter. The AOC and Bernie rallies where 34,000 people show up because they're mad. These are the things that we all have to continue to put our own energy and efforts and presence into, because it will make a difference if we keep growing it and keep putting the pressure on.
And I guess the scene from the movie that stands out to me, Mark, in relation to this is at the very end when Snow White's walking towards the castle and the whole village joins behind her. And she then starts making personal connection with the guards and reminding them of who they are. She starts telling their story, and it brings everyone in. And to me, like as I was watching that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what saves us, is when we all gather together and we all say, no, enough. That this is not who we are.
Exactly. And part of that is what you just described. It's also no longer allowing the people who are trying to instill fear divide us. It's seeing each other as people. It's seeing the divine in each other. It is reaching out and saying, I know you. I know who you are. It is calling each other to their better selves, as you said, but it's also saying, I'm not going to allow the fear to divide us, because we are more alike than we are different.
I love that. Okay, well, I have a lot of other theopolitical questions I'd love to dive into, because believe it or not, this film was rich with them, both from the controversies ahead of time and because of what the movie was actually about. And so, as much as I would love to delve into that more, if we do, we won't get to our favorite segment, the Make Me Look Stupid segment. So why don't we take a break, take a drink, and then come back and try to make each other look stupid.
Thank you for joining us for the Make Me Look Stupid segment, where we either try to make our co-hosts look stupid, or we ask a question to prove that we are stupid, or we try to make our co-hosts make a prediction so that they can look stupid in the future. Today, I guess I'm going to ask a question that could do both of the first two: make you look stupid or prove that I'm stupid because I don't understand. So I'm going to give you a little list here. And I'm going to try to get through it coherently because this fairest cocktail of them all is a little too good, and I've already had two of them, and they were really good. Okay, so here's my list: Bambi's mother, Nemo's mother, Lilo's mother, on the Fox and Hound, Toad's mother, Brother Bear, Coda's mother, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Quasimodo's mother, Pocahontas's mother, Frozen, both mom and dad, Snow White. What is the deal with Disney and dead moms?
I think Walt Disney, just really had issues with his mother.
It was wishful thinking. Are you? Oh, wow, that's rough.
And it's really carried over into the into the movie. No, I mean, like, it's something, right? And these are the movies
It's over
for
the top,
kids.
man.
Yeah, these are movies for kids that, like, you know how often these Disney movies really are dealing with very heavy stuff. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to me that whenever I was a kid, I don't think I caught it a lot, or I don't know. If I was not paying attention, I was busy eating my
For some
pizza at the
reason,
moment.
Bambi's mom really hit me hard. The rest of them I didn't really catch.
Bambi's mom, I think it's because that one is so interesting because you hear the gunshot and it happens off screen. There's something about that, the gunshot,
fair.
that really grabs you. But the rest of these, but whenever I've gone back and watched them with my kids, I'm like, oh crap, they just died. Or even like in Up, which is a little bit different than this, right? But where she has a miscarriage, I'm like, oh wow, she just had a miscarriage.
Right.
She then eventually dies and he's on his
Yeah.
own. And so it's interesting. I think it's built in I think Walt Disney's mother issues are built into the Disney handbook. And so so Disney movies have to have that in there for Walt Disney's legacy. That's what I think. What do you think, Mark? What's this about? What's with all the dead moms?
I think it started, in an age where the nurturing part of parenting mostly came from mothers. Fortunately, we've moved forward as society. Part of our society has moved forward enough that it's perfectly acceptable for men to also be very nurturing towards their kids. But most of these stories were written in a period where moms were the most nurturing. And so removing the most nurturing person from the storyline provides a real opportunity to add tension. I think it's a really poor psychological choice, but I get why, from a writer's standpoint, they realize that they take away this opportunity for nurturing, for caring, for comforting, that will make you, when you're identifying with the main character, more likely to internalize their fear and their worry and their concern. So, and then they've continued it on just because all of a sudden now that's what Disney does, which is the dumbest. That's the only reason I asked the question, because it's so dumb. I wanted us to have the opportunity to get it out there how stupid this is.
It's also done unfathomable damage to step families, families with stepmother, stepfather, stepsister, stepbrother, like as families, every family's different, that it's made it really hard because there's they've also given kids a lot of baggage that they didn't need and is unnecessary. Okay, so I've got a number of questions that I didn't get to in my last segment, so I'm just going to pick one, Mark, that I want to ask you about.
Let's go with it.
Politics, okay? So the Queen says, "All is fair when you wear the crown." That right, once you've got the crown, you can do whatever you want. Now, clearly, that's unjust. Clearly, like human beings probably shouldn't think that, and
Right.
clearly, we as Americans have built our whole identity around not thinking that. But here's my question: we've got someone who's wearing a figurative crown, right?
Mm,
Okay,
yeah.
assuming that we are able to vote him out, that there is a next election, that we're able to vote
A
him
fair election,
a fair election, right?
not just one, but a fair one.
Right, and then that there's a peaceful transition of power, and so there's a lot of assumptions.
There's a if followed by an if followed by an if followed by an
That's right.
if. Yeah.
That's right. But assuming we can
Yeah.
go back to some sense of normalcy,
Yes.
how do we keep someone from grabbing that figurative crown again and putting it right back on their heads now that we've
Yeah.
we've gone down the slippery slope?
Listen, we've known maybe for 4 decades now that we have an outdated system, that it allows for things it shouldn't allow for, and that we are trusting people's better judgment to control their behavior. We finally are having the experience where we have to recognize you can't make that you can't assume that that's going to be the reality, that there are going to be people where power is so appealing to them, they will lie as hard as they can possibly lie. They will manipulate as much as they possibly can to get the power and then do whatever they want regardless of what they said. What will have to happen, whoever, if we do get to elect someone else, that person will work harder, in my opinion, even more so than the founding fathers. They have so much work that has to be done in rewriting and reconfiguring our form of government and the rules and regulations and the controls that are put on it and how they're enforced and how people who are supposed to enforce them are forced to enforce them. There is so much work that has to be done. It is a monumental task that someone's going to have to take on. But that's the only thing that will stop it, is a full rewrite of our form of government. That's my opinion. I don't know. Am I overstating? Am I over panicking? Am I?
No, I really think that this is a tipping point for the
Yeah.
United States, that we have seen so much damage done in the past 2 months that I think, yeah, we're past the point where we're going to be able to return to some type of normalcy. And looking at the past, 8 years, I think about the first Trump administration, how chaotic that felt, but there was still some semblance of normalcy, right? Like, there were unjust policies, there were rights being stripped away, but at a much more gradual pace. A lot of it was rhetoric too.
Sure.
And then when Biden was elected, there was it felt like kind of just a pause, really, in what was happening. And then this reelection of Donald Trump and this rapid descent. I think you're right. I'm not sure that the United States government is going to be able to recover, even if we were to elect someone who had the best interests of the country really at heart, that they were
Yeah.
more interested in the survival of the country than in partisan politics or in personal power or personal gain. I'm not sure that you can put Humpty Dumpty back together again on this. That I think we
Yeah.
have descended into this, that it's going to be like Germany after the Second World War. That's
Mhm.
just going to have to be completely rebuilt. So
Yeah.
thank you,
If
Mark.
we yeah, I hear you, and I think I agree with everything you said. If we do get a free and fair election the next time, the person who's going to win is the person who says, "I'm going to ensure Trump never happens again." They don't have to run on anything else at this point.
Yeah.
Even Republicans at this point, 2 months in, even Republicans will vote for the person that says, "I'm going to make sure we will rework everything to make sure Trump doesn't happen again." if we even get to that point.
Yeah.
Boy, I hate to finish this on a downer, but
I know.
the truth is, it's a difficult time right now, and people are getting hurt, people getting killed, people getting separated from the folks that they care the most about. It's a big issue, and
Yeah.
everybody needs to treat it more like it. We don't have, frankly, enough people in the streets. We don't have enough people who are losing their minds about it. You don't have enough people who are saying fuck enough.
Yeah.
So,
That's
you know,
so,
we need to take it more seriously. So listen,
so fuck, Mark.
yeah, there you
Let's
go.
have another drink, you know?
There you go. All right. So it's been a great show, but we need to talk about our next one. There's
Mhm.
not really any new sci-fi fantasy coming out, but before the show, you and I were talking, and you pointed out that there's a show that has wrapped up its second season that we promised we'd come back and visit.
Yes, yes. Silo,
Oh yeah,
season 2. And if you all have watched Silo, it takes place
so
in
good.
this dystopian future. And I actually remember, Mark, whenever we decided to talk about this for the first time, I went through and I pulled up the description of it, and I'm like, in a dystopian future where humanity is forced to live in a silo below the earth. And I'm like, this sounds terrible. But it was actually amazing.
It is
And,
amazing.
and it got super into it. And so season 1 ends with the main character going outside of the silo to see if she can
Yeah.
survive. And so season
Yeah.
2 picks up right there. And I think it's a great thing to talk about.
All right. So that's what we're going to do. Everybody, if you have the time, make sure that you catch up on season 2. Hopefully, most of you have been watching it. I have been, and I can tell you it is a really exceptional season. I liked it almost, if not as much as the first season. So it's a great watch. Encourage you to do it. And then we'll come back next week and we will talk about it and talk about the theopolitical perspectives that it brings up. And until then, we just thank you. Always, y'all allow us to do this show, favorite part of our week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that said, we'll see you next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.